My initial reaction was this is great, because so often these debates become parallel news conferences where one candidate answers the question to him, the other candidate answers the question to him. So when the president started engaging with Biden, I thought we're going to have a real debate here. It became clearer and clearer over time that this was something different, and that the president was determined to try to butt in and throw Joe Biden off. You gave your statistics. I saw another Fox analysis that indicates the president interrupted either Biden's answers or my questions a total of 145 times, which is way more than 1 minute. And he bears the primary responsibility for what happened on.
There were a lot of interruptions. That is the true. There were a lot of interruptions. Now, Biden, I think, interrupted about 70 times. Trump, he says 140. So Trump, more interruptions than Biden. Biden interrupted him back. I mean, a lot of interruptions. That is a fact. I can't say that that's not a lot. But I think that the biggest problem with the debate, if there could be any one thing, was the moment the president felt like it was a 2-on-1, then he just wanted to go bare knuckle and it was a free-for-all. And that happened very early on. It happened because the way that Chris Wallace, a Democrat who clearly wants a job at NBC News, a Democrat interacted with Trump from the earliest phases of the debate, showed exactly what I used to deal with when I'd go on to represent a conservative point of view at CNN, which is that, the moderator, the anchor, whatever, he's on this other guy's team. That much was quite clear. He's on this other person's side. And once you feel like that's the case, then things really get crazy. Then things really get nuts. And that's what happened. There was that. So the lack of a perception of impartiality by Trump, which I think is completely founded, that was a big problem. But the even more obvious problem, perhaps, because that one, there's some subtleties. The even more obvious problem is that the questions that were asked were just, the topics were not very good. And the questions were clearly meant to attack Trump, and they were dumb. We'll get into this white supremacist fixation. That's, I think, fading today, but the media had it for a few days. But the whole way that this was structured and set up, and the attacks on the way the questions that Chris Wallace put out there were meant to undermine the president was very obvious. So, of course, he's going to react in a way where he feels like he's in an ambush. And this is, I can tell you this right now, even if you're a really adept debater, and I'm sure many, many, many of you listening are, debating two people is really hard. It's really hard because you have, especially if you're a person who's generally fair-minded, you want to give them equal time, or at least some time to respond. But when it's two people and you feel like it's 2-on-1, well, now it's clearly not equal time. So now you're just going to fight for everything you have. Now you're just going to be in a position where you feel like they're throwing elbows, I'm throwing elbows too. And you got two people you got to hit back against. So the questions were a total travesty. I don't want to get too much into the debate aftermath. We already did that. But now it's what's happening in the next debates? As you know, the vice president is scheduled to debate Kamala Harris coming up on Wednesday. I think that will be interesting. I think that Mike Pence is a little bit of an undervalued asset to the administration. The guy is, it's funny, so much of the criticism around Trump is he's not presidential. And Mike Pence could be the president in every movie ever made, right? I mean, Mike Pence is the guy you think of. His tone of voice, his demeanor, the way he looks, everything. I mean, it's like, this guy looks like he's the president. Straight out of Central Casting. And a very nice guy, too. All my interactions with him, I found him to be very, very pleasant, and it seems like that's really who he is. And I think it was a very, I criticized the president before. He's made some bad choices about picks. He's also made some great choices. And I think Vice President Pence is an excellent choice and has been a huge asset to the administration. I think Pompeo is a great choice. Barr. Credit where it's due, always, right? Let's be honest and fair. So now what happens in the presidential debate, though? Now that's an open question. I don't think anybody really knows. For one thing, there's all this talk about, and I said I kind of like the idea, and now I've gone back. So, I changed my mind about these things, or I evolve in my thinking, because I was frustrated about all the crosstalk. It's not fun to watch crosstalk. As a viewer, this is one of the reasons I don't have Democrats on radio to argue with, because we're just going to start. I value your time so much that I don't want you to hear, the back and forth of and you don't know what's being said. And now you're like, what am I wasting my time here for? So crosstalk inherently is a frustrating. It's like the equivalent of watching a TV that has a fuzzy picture. I don't care what the show is. You could be watching your favorite movie of all time. If there's lines going through the picture and it's fuzzy, you're like, I'm not enjoying this. That's what crosstalk does in a debate and in an exchange on politics. So that was why I was thinking maybe a mute button would stop that. But of course, then the mute button, how that moderator, and the moderators that Trump's going to do here are libs in the next round. I've never even heard of some of them before. I think it's fascinating who the Commission on Presidential Debates chooses to moderate a presidential debate. Because I've never heard of them, I think it's likely they'll probably not be so one-sided in their questioning. I think it's likely they won't be so clearly favoring one side. That doesn't mean they won't favor, but I don't think they'll be as obvious. And Chris Wallace, of course, doesn't think it was obvious. I think it was a disgrace. But it's also telling that Democrats really don't want Biden to go into another debate, which if they thought that Trump was such a barbarian and so terrible and so awful, wouldn't they want this? Right? I mean, when I'm just going to say it. I'm freakishly good at ping pong, and I smoke people in ping pong all the time. I don't know why. Now, there are obviously some of you are like, look, I'm professional on the Olympic team. Yeah, you would beat me, but your average weekend warrior ping pong player can't hang with the buckster. And if I beat somebody, they want to come back and they want to play, I'm going to say, yeah, sure, I'll play. Beat this guy before, I'll beat him again, right? It's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Well, why wouldn't Pelosi, if Trump was such an uncouth barbarian and Biden did so well against him, why would she be saying this? Play 9.
People say, well, they should have had a button that turned one microphone off while the other person was speaking. Whatever it is, I think one and done. But when people run for president, that's president of the United States. Joe Biden will do. He's courageous. I never thought he shouldn't do it because I didn't think he would do well. I thought he shouldn't do it because I thought something like this could happen.
But if we're up to you, one and done.
One and done.
One and done. What did I tell you? Again, I don't like to be the guy that's always, well, I kind of do like to be that guy, but I said, people asked me if you go back to some of the roll calls in July, August, I was like, there's going to be one debate. There's got to be one debate. Biden's got to show up for it. Now with the COVID diagnosis of Trump, and are we sure there's going to be another debate? I'm not certain. I think the Democrats believe that they could get away with not doing it, and that's also one of the reasons they're attacking the COVID precautions or lack thereof, they say, from the Trump side in this last debate to say, see, it's like debating Trump is not just unpleasant because he's so mean, but it's also a health risk, right? This is the other thing that you now hear from people. And then there's Joy Behar. She's on television, so she can just tell you about politics. No big whoop. Here she is, play 18.
You don't think Biden should show up to the debates, Joy, anymore? Is that true?
Yes, I don't think he should do it. I think he should stay away. Joe Biden has nothing to gain from this. It's a fiasco. It gives Trump a platform to lie, to give dog whistles to his base, to sort of instruct them to be violent in this very sort of semi-subtle way, I'll say. There's absolutely nothing. Biden is too much of a gentleman to be talking on the same stage with this Neanderthal. Look at what happened the other night when Trump attacked his son, Biden's son. Biden could have gone after him and talked about Ivanka, the consultant, but he did not do that because he's a gentleman. Americans have seen enough. We don't need to see anymore. If you're still undecided out there, you need to see a shrink.
I think Joy needs to see a shrink. I think Joy's out there saying things that are just not true. Yeah, you're going to compare Hunter Biden to Ivanka Trump. Good luck with that one, Joy. See how that goes in the public eye. Yeah. One is a crackhead who impregnates strippers and pretends he's not the daddy of the baby after making lots of money from his daddy's connections. And the other is Ivanka Trump. So, yeah. Just saying, I don't think that really has quite the resonance that she thinks that it does. Biden's too much of a gentleman to be talking on the same stage with this Neanderthal. Okay, Joy. Okay, sure. Who listen? I want to meet a person who thinks that they should hear what Joy Behar thinks in politics. I want to meet this person and then ask them if they can tie their own shoes. Just as an experiment. I want to know. I'm curious. It's like a sociological experiment. Like, I just listen to Joy. I think Joy's got great advice and thoughts on things, says Joy. I don't see it. I don't see it at all. But she's great for this show, though. Just because I talked to millions. All right, I'll stop. I know a lot of you are like, Buck, good God, get a grip. Yeah. Will there be another debate? I'm not sure. Will Trump win the next one? I think he would. If you see there's a poll that was circulating. I think it was a CNBC poll, hundreds of thousands of votes. Now, it's not a scientific poll. Okay, yeah. No, C-SPAN poll, pardon me. Who won the first presidential debate? 69% with 325,000 votes in. 69%. Donald Trump. I think maybe that's why they don't want another debate. What does the COVID-19 pandemic have to do with you losing your home? Well, you see, the FBI says cybercrime's up about 75% since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, and home title theft is a cybercrime. Here's how it works. The bad guys, they find your information online, then they use a quitclaim deed to kick you off your home's title, put them on your home's title, take out loans against your equity, and then leave you with the payments. You might not even find out about this until you get the foreclosure notice on your home in the mail. The usual identity theft services do not protect you, which is why you need Home Title Lock. Go to HometitleLock.com. It'll create a virtual barrier around your home's title. Use the promo code RADIO, and you'll get 30 free days of protection. You can also check at the site to see if you're a victim of this crime and don't even know it. HometitleLock.com, promo code RADIO for 30 free days of protection, and you can check to see if you're a victim of home title theft without even knowing it yet. Take action today.
Biden lost badly when his supporters are saying that he should cancel the next debate. Now that we want to change the rules, they want to change the rules. That's what they want to do and allow the moderator to cut off the microphone. Democrats always want to shut down free speech. That's what they want to do because they're terrified the American people will hear the truth. They want to rig this debate. They want to rig the election with the ballots, these millions of ballots that are coming in that nobody knows where they're coming from, who they're coming to, and who's sending them back. I'm not just running against Joe Biden. I'm running against the corrupt far-left media, the socialists, communists, and the Democrat Party, and the special interests who get rich bleeding off our country and bleeding it dry. Never forget, they are coming after me because I am fighting for you. So true.
It really is true that they've tried in so many different mechanisms, so many different ways to change the rules at the last minute. And this has really become a progressive Democrat obsession. They want to make sure that they just change the rules of the game. They're afraid they can't actually win the game. The contest will not work for them, so they want to change the rules around it. They completely dispense with any pretense that we've got these rules for a reason, and the rules have been agreed to. The rules are there because they're sensible, because they're fair to both sides. No. Forget that. Whatever it takes, anything to win. That's the approach. And that's also of the Democrats. And that's why I view the Trump response to all of this. I view President Trump's feelings on not just the way he interacted with Joe Biden, but also how Joe Biden now wanting to duck a debate is indicative of the real feelings of Democrats. I think this is pretty obvious at this point. I think it's true, but we shall see if it ends up happening or not. Now we also have the ACB situation, right? Where people have been saying that they should now defer or delay the ACB nomination based upon the president having a COVID diagnosis. Now, understand this. She, I believe, already had COVID-19, as did her husband over the summer, and she's now fine. So she should probably have some degree of immunity to it now. Although now there's all these studies about how the antibodies wear off after a few months, whatever. But ACB, that has nothing to do with the president. There's no reason. The Senate was able to conduct its business yesterday. The Senate should be able to conduct its business tomorrow. There's nothing about this that should make us all think that we don't go forward with the process. But Democrats are desperate, right? They've gone from it's not in the rules to now it's a COVID to, once again, it's always for them about complaining about the process when it doesn't work for them and claiming the process is absolutely sacrosanct when it does, right? A principle would be the understanding of why things are the way they are, the reasons for that, and how it's fair to both sides, including when both sides disagree on something. With Democrats, it's purely about self-interest and whatever works in the circumstance, and that's how they approach it. That's how they approach everything. It's the way they feel about the debates, the way they feel about mail-in ballots, and now it's the way they feel about the ACB nomination. I think we've actually reached a point here where the ACB, I had initially thought that it would add, everyone's been making the same joke about this is Spinal Tap, it'll take the dial to 11, but something like that it would just be the Sharknado of political clashes, right? Just oh my gosh, we got this presidential election with Trump, and then we've got the ACP nomination for the RBGC. And now I'm starting to think that maybe this is like another movie analogy. Remember in Shawshank when he uses the sound of the thunder to mask when he breaks open the sewage pipe with the rock? Great movie. Producer Mark, you've seen Shawshank Redemption, right?
Of course.
Yeah, great movie. I mean, ridiculous, it's very unrealistic, but who cares? Great movie. I don't care. So I really like the movie a lot. But, he masks the pounding sound of the rock with the thunder. And I almost feel like right now, the ACB nomination, there's so much, they've put so much energy into Trump hatred that maybe, and I may regret saying this in a week or two, I'm going to admit this right now, maybe they're just, they've got their reserves of the lunatic libs, off the main battlefield and they're about to rush out. I don't know. But it feels like they might have exhausted all resources and energy of hatred and insanity at Trump. So they just can't even, they want to make a total war situation out of the ACB nomination. But how do they go beyond the max? How do you go beyond all out war, the full on frenzy? It doesn't seem clear to me how they would do that. It doesn't seem clear to me what they would do to go there. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I'm starting to think that maybe the Trump election is the thunder that's going to mask the rock breaking the pipe of the ACB nomination at some level. Like it's just they can't do both. They can't fight both of these wars effectively at the same time. They don't have, they're fighting a war on two fronts and they don't have the manpower to do it because they've gone all in against Trump. And that's why, Schumer, for example, is saying stuff like this. It's just such weak sauce. Play 13.
No Dem has attacked Barrett over her faith. It's a diversion because they don't want to address the issues, including health care and including Roe v. Wade. I think Roe v. Wade, if Judge Barrett got on the court, could either be eliminated or at the very minimum, the horrible minimum, so greatly constricted that you'd never recognize it.
No, we're not avoiding. That's crazy. First of all, the the claim that no one's attacking her over her faith, it's happening all over the place, all over the media. They're attacking her constantly, okay, about things that have to do with her Catholicism. So that's just crazy talk, right? But he knows that it's not a good look to especially attack a woman, I think, over her faith. I just think the public views that as, a Catholic mom. Oh, she's now a psycho weirdo Jesus freak. Is that what they're really saying? Not a good look, libs. Not a good look, Democrats. But now to say that, oh, well, Roe is under threat. Guess what? Conservatives want it to be. Liberals act like if people hear that Roe v. Wade may be in jeopardy, everyone who supports the ACB nomination is going to be like, well, in that case, you have it backwards, Schumer. You gross, underhanded fellow, you.
I have to say, I've said it many times, and let me be clear again. I condemn the KKK. I condemn all white supremacists. I condemn the Proud Boys. I don't know much about the Proud Boys, almost nothing, but I condemn that. But he should condemn also Antifa. Antifa is a horrible group of people. They kill people. What they do to people, and they're causing insurrection. They're causing riots. He doesn't want to do that, but the press doesn't go after him, and that's a really bad group of people. But I condemn them, and if I say it 100 times, it won't be enough because it's fake news.
It's true. It won't be enough. It's not about getting an answer from the president. That was Trump on Sean Hannity's show. And yeah, the president has said it before. He's saying it again. The people asking this question aren't trying to get an answer. It's an assault. It's an insult. The question is meant as an insult. Okay? So understand that. Be clear on that from the get-go. Once we've established that issue, then all of a sudden everything else becomes much more apparent. Then all of a sudden everything that follows from it, you go, oh, well, exactly. That's why the president gets so angry when they ask him this. Wouldn't you be angry too? I mean, we've gone over this. We've talked about this. The whole thing is so absurd. Speaking of angry, though, Fox News, some Fox News folks have had a tough week. Not a good one for Chris Wallace or John Roberts, the White House correspondent. He got very hissy yesterday outside the White House. Play two.
And for all of you on Twitter who were hammering me for asking that question, I don't care, because it's a question that needs to be asked. And clearly, the president's Republican colleagues a mile away from here are looking for an answer for it, too. So stop deflecting. Stop blaming the media. I'm tired of it.
Tired of it. Come on, man. Really? Come on. You're dumb enough to think that we have to get the on the record denouncing of white supremacists from a president who's denounced it a million times, and you think people aren't going to hold you accountable for that? Look, I know what it's like. I've rarely, but occasionally either asked a question or said something in media that I thought, oh, that wasn't really my best moment. You know, I don't go around blaming everybody else for it, though. You know, John Roberts, take the L, John. Just take the L. It's not a big deal. Just take the L. Don't throw a tantrum on national TV about it. It's a dumb question. It shouldn't be asked. It's an offensive question. It's already been dealt with. And we all know the game that the libs are playing here. But let's now go a little more specifically into this notion of forget about the president denouncing, right? We've dealt with that. That's just a lib attack. Let's talk about white supremacy. Let's talk about why the Democrat Party, the liberal media, has such an intense fixation on this. Well, for one thing, it as I've been saying to you, it creates a false moral equivalence between the two political parties. That, we have our violent people, they have their violent people, and right, and our violent people are the white supremacists and the Proud Boys. Now, there's a lot going on here. For one, the Proud Boys, and one of their founders is Gavin McInnes. I know Gavin McInnes. He used to be on Fox News a lot. He was on the show Red Eye frequently, if you remember that show. I've talked to Gavin before. He's a provocative guy, but he's not a white supremacist. At least by all of his own claims, what he says publicly, he's not a white supremacist. I believe he's actually married to a Native American, and he is somebody who, yes, he says things that I would not say, but he does not claim, I've never heard him claim to actually be a white supremacist. The Proud Boys, the organization that is affiliated with him, now, I don't think he has anything to do with it anymore, but I believe he was one of the founders. He was also one of the founders of Vice. Remember that big, liberal, left-wing media organization that was all sort of built on venture capital money and fumes. But he's one of the founders of that as well. But the Proud Boys organization, look, it's not my thing, okay? I wouldn't show up and want to fight Antifa, but here's what I do know about the Proud Boys. One is that my friend Ann Coulter has had interactions with them, knows them, and says that they essentially are a drinking club for men. It's for men only. It's a drinking club for men, and they're also patriots who will show up at events and not allow Antifa to threaten, attack, and hurt people. Right? They don't go outside of people's homes to harass them over politics. They don't loot stores. They don't burn down. They don't do any of these things that the left does and that the organized left under the auspices of either Antifa or BLM do. The Proud Boys do not do that. The Proud Boys have not yet, as an organization, and again, like I said, not my thing. I wouldn't do it, and I'm not taking any responsibility for things that they've said in the past or whatever. I'm trying to analyze this group versus as it is versus what the media claims it to be. They have not killed anybody. I think that's a pretty profound fact in all of this. They've never killed anyone. Nope, Proud Boys never killed anybody. I don't believe they've even ever severely injured anybody. I mean, maybe some cuts and bruises, a black eye here or there, but I don't believe they put anybody in the hospital. I'm not aware of that ever happening, and if I'm wrong, I will come on and say I'm wrong. BLM has murdered cops, executed them, assassinated them. BLM supporters have done that. Now, to be a BLM supporter, to be a part of BLM, it's just professing your allegiance, right? And we do accept this with other extremist entities. If someone says, I'm going to go out and blow up a building on behalf of Al-Qaeda, they're considered to be someone who is at least inspired by Al-Qaeda, right? Maybe they haven't sworn the bay'ah, the oath of loyalty to Al-Qaeda, but they're doing it as part of the organization. People have killed because of the ideology of BLM. Antifa has murdered people. Antifa murdered a Trump supporter in Portland a couple of weeks ago. Just cold-blooded execution. Okay. So in what way are these organizations really equivalent? Right? And I know for sure the Proud Boys have never engaged in a riot. They've never engaged in looting a store, burning down a business. They do not attack innocent people. BLM and Antifa attack innocent people because they feel like they have this license because of systemic oppression and the racism and all this stuff to just hurt people or threaten them or destroy their stuff. Now, the Proud Boys, in a sense, have become a kind of anti-Antifa. Showed up at speeches that conservatives will give. They'll defend them. And this was all told. I talked to Ann last night. I had her on NYC radio, and we had a discussion about this, and she knows them well. And I know some of you are frustrated with Ann because she's not as supportive of the president. She's voting for the president. She wants him to win, but she feels like he hasn't followed through on some promises, and that's a conversation we can get into another day. But to call the Proud Boys white supremacists and try to put them in the same category as neo-Nazis, I don't see the evidence for that. I don't see how, and that is the media claim, that a guy with swastikas tattooed on his neck who believes in white racial superiority, which would mean a guy who is an evil moron, is the same as the Proud Boys. Like these are the same things. Now, I know the president has denounced them officially and said, because this is whatever. If he doesn't, it's like, oh, well, he's not denouncing the Proud Boys as white supremacists. And the Southern Poverty Law Center is a joke. It's atrocious. They think Dennis Prager's a white supremacist. They've put Ben Shapiro's name in publications about extremists on the right, which is, absurd. I wish they'd do that to me because it's great press, great PR. But anyway, Southern Poverty Law Center is a disgusting left-wing hatchet job organization. That's what it's become. I know it wasn't always, but that is what it has become. Same thing with the ACLU. The ACLU is anti-liberty. It's just there to destroy Christianity and America. That's what the ACLU really stands for now. But the Proud Boys, when you really look into this, there are some holes in the narrative from the left about it. And there's this obsession because they're the only visible so-called alleged white supremacist the media can point to. That in Charlottesville, which was 4 years ago? Where are all these white supremacist rallies? Where are all these people that are standing up and saying they're white supremacists? No, in fact, to do so is social suicide. That's how America really feels about it. If you say you're a white supremacist and you think of yourself as on the right, 99%, 99.9% of conservatives are going to say, ew, that's disgusting. Don't talk to me again. That's the reality of this country with white supremacy. But the Proud Boys, they create this connection between the two things. Here is the chief of the Proud Boys in Salt Lake City, Utah, for example. And he is he's a minority. I can't remember if he's either Hispanic or black, but he is one or the other. I don't recall right now off the top of my head. And here's what he says about whites, officially on the record in an interview with CNN. Here's what he said about white supremacy. Play one.
I will go out and say that the Proud Boys as a whole, I will say this on behalf of the entire national organization, denounce white supremacy. We are in no way, shape, or form white supremacists. We have a vetting system that just gets those guys out of our hair. We do not have anything to do with white supremacy. We do not have anything to do with the Ku Klux Klan. We denounce those organizations.
Could he be more emphatic? I don't know. I mean, I guess he could throw some curses in there. But it seems pretty clear to me that here you have a guy who is in a leadership position for this loosely affiliated, but it is an organization. And he's saying, look, white supremacy is horrible. And he's not white. In fact, I believe the national head of the Proud Boys is a Cuban American. So it's a white supremacist. If you listen to the media, here you have a white supremacist organization with not white people in the top leadership positions. For a true white supremacist, that would be a problem, right? Wouldn't that be an issue? If the whole group is about racial purity and these other evil and discredited ideologies, wouldn't that be an issue for? Well, maybe they're not white supremacists. And like I said, I'm not sitting here saying that I don't know enough about the Proud Boys, what they do everywhere, but I do know other conservatives who say that to call them white supremacists is a slander. It's not true. And to compare what they do to what Antifa does is also slanderous and unfair. The Proud Boys are not going to ruin your business. They're not going to show up and demand that you say something because they think they have some political authority and power to do so. No. They, go to drinking events, wave around American flags, and they don't let Antifa threaten conservative speakers on college campuses and other venues. That's what I know of them so far. And I've been looking into this and talked to people who've spent a lot of time around them. I think I was at one DC drinking kind of like conservative drinking event, and there were some people who were Proud Boys who were outside of it, like they had showed up to the venue. I didn't talk to them. I didn't spend any time getting into. I mean, I remember there was one guy who was like yelling, I'm a Proud Boy, because there were some Antifa that showed up too. So this is kind of like a little bit like a political fraternity, maybe a political gang, but it's not white supremacists. And the media should be able to get this right, but they don't want to get it right because the threat of white supremacy is a necessary boogeyman for the Democrat media at this point, because now they can say, see, there's political violence on all sides. And in fact, they even go a step further than that and will claim that most political violence, after what we have seen for months now, most political violence in America actually comes from the right. That's really the claim that they will make. Most political violence comes from our side. It's stunning, but this is what they do.
This is not to discount the idea that violence is an explicitly partisan idea, but right now the organized violence is coming from white supremacist groups. They are gathering together. They used to gather together on places like Facebook, but now they have to go to deeper, darker corners of the web. They make events and they tell people, we're going to go, beat up the left here. The initiation process with the Proud Boys The very last step is to commit violence on behalf of the Proud Boys. That's what this is about. So yes, Antifa is a violent ideology that, pushes back against what they deem to be fascism. But the organized groups that are committing domestic terror in the United States, according to Donald Trump's own intelligence agencies, that's white supremacy. That's the problem right now that we, not just extremism researchers, but the actual officials, trying to tamp down this stuff, that's the problem.
Yeah. No, sorry. Not going to do this thing. Antifa thinks they're pushing back on fascism. Well, they're a bunch of delusional lunatics. Because what they're really doing is attacking police officers. So unless we're going to have NBC's extremism correspondent here explain how cops in America are fascists, which I think a lot of the libs do want to believe. They will go along with this absurdity. Antifa is engaged in organized violence. Antifa has a book called the Anti-Fascist Handbook that explains their whole ideology and history. They organize online. They show up en masse. They attack people, businesses, strangers. They are a paramilitary terrorist group operating in the United States. They've been doing it now for months on end, and they've actually been doing it stretching back for many years. And our own media whitewashes the whole thing. What do you mean? There's no, oh yeah, they think they're pushing back on fascism. Well, they're wrong. They're lunatics. They're psycho libs who need to get a grip and get a job. Get a girlfriend or a wife. I mean, really. That's the truth. A lot of incels. I'm just going to say it. A lot of incels in this Antifa movement. You see these guys, they're getting arrested and stuff. You're like, ugh. Just tell. A bunch of losers. Bunch of losers. I can't imagine anybody who has not been completely brainwashed hearing this NBC News report on how, the organized violence comes from the right. What's the horizon we're talking about here? Are they looking back 20 years and saying that, that right-wing extremists overall have accounted for more? Well, what counts as a left-wing extremist? That's another question that's worth asking. And police assassinations, shouldn't that go under the left-wing category? And they also used to do this thing of discounting. They'd say right-wing violence minus 9/11, worse than any other ideology in America. Yeah, And without Pearl Harbor, we wouldn't have gotten into World War II. What exactly are they saying?